Right, hello everyone, welcome to this revision video about Elizabeth I and Mary Queen of Scots. Now, Mary Queen of Scots was an absolutely pivotal character in the rule of Elizabeth I, and it's somebody that is really vital for you to know about. If you have a look at this timeline of key events, the crucial date is in 1568 when Mary Queen of Scots arrives in England, and she arrives in England under the midst of great scandal. Mary is implicated in the murder of her second husband, Lord Darnley, and it's due to this that the Scottish nobles organise and basically force her to abdicate her throne in favour of her son, James, who will eventually become James I of England. And really what's crucial is that once Mary returns to England, she sparks off a whole series of Catholic plots, starting off with the Northern Rebellion in 1569, and then obviously the Ridolfi plot of 1571, the Throckmorton plot of 1583, and the Babington plot of 1586. And this all culminates in the end in her execution in 1587, after the spymaster in Elizabeth's rule, Francis Walsingham, manages to secure the crucial bit of evidence to ensure that she's found guilty of treason and she's executed. So this video is just going to focus a little bit more on Mary Queen of Scots and focus about her impact on Elizabeth's rule and why she was so dangerous. So to understand why Mary Queen of the Scots was so dangerous, there's two real things for you to think about. The first is that she was a Catholic. So she was brought up in France with the Guise family, and she was a Catholic. And she also had a legitimate claim to the throne, so you can see her position there in the family. She was a cousin of Elizabeth I, and because Elizabeth I had no children, in fact none of Henry VIII's children had their own children, it meant that the line of succession was going to go back through Henry VIII's elder sister Margaret, through James V of Scotland, through Mary Queen of Scots, and therefore she had a really strong claim to the throne. This was what was known as the Stuart claim to the throne. So had Elizabeth I died, there would be many people that would have thought that Mary Queen of Scots is the natural successor, and the fact that she was a Catholic gave Catholics in England a realistic opportunity to think that this was their best way of restoring Catholicism to England. So, in terms of Mary Queen of Scots being dangerous, we can see there why she was. And historians like Simon Sharma talk about how she was public enemy number one. And that was certainly a view shared by Lord Burleigh, who went to great lengths to ensure that Elizabeth I and Mary Queen of Scots never actually met. Mary Queen of Scots somehow felt that Elizabeth could perhaps save her, referred to her often as her sister queen. But actually the two never actually met, and that was partly because people like Lord Burleigh felt that Mary Queen of Scots was dangerous and represented a real threat to the stability and the order of Elizabeth's rule. And Mary Queen of Scots, although perhaps she didn't organise all these plots, but she was a focal point for these plots in England in the 1570s and 1580s. And that's one of the reasons why, as soon as Mary Queen of Scots returned to England in 1568, that she was kept in various castles and fortified houses in England, mainly in the north, in places that are away from the coast, so places like Derbyshire, for example, Yorkshire. She was kept away so that she could not be a threat to the rule of Elizabeth I. So this is what happened with Mary Queen of Scots, and I think learning these key events is really crucial. So she arrives by fishing boat. She arrives back in May 1568. Catholic, pro-French, potential heir. Very big concerns about this being the focal point for Catholic resistance. She was placed under house arrest at various places, like I've said, Carlisle Castle, Bolton Castle, for example, in the Dales. And really, the key thing to know is to understand that her arrival sparked much more instability, really, in the rule of Elizabeth I. So sparked the Northern Rebellion of 1569, the Ridolfi plot of 1571, the Throckmorton plot of 1583, and the Babington plot of 1586. And obviously we know that Mary Queen of Scots was finally executed in February 1587. So what was the Northern Rebellion all about? Well, the arrival of Mary Queen of Scots helped trigger it, and you can see there pictured is the Duke of Norfolk, and he was playing a central role in this. He was a Catholic. He was somebody that would have liked to have seen a Catholic on the throne, resented Cecil's power, Elizabeth's chief minister, and really the plan was for the Duke of Norfolk to marry Mary and essentially not to kill Elizabeth or anything like that, but to set her up as Elizabeth's heir. But there was no actual plan within the Northern Rebellion for Elizabeth to be killed. So that was the plan, really, to create sort of a strong line of succession where if Elizabeth did die, then the throne would pass to Mary Queen of Scots. So once this plot's uncovered, it actually then leads to the Northern Rebellion. The Earl of Northumberland and the Earl of Westmoreland, they're summoned to court, and as a result of this, they rebel. And the two earls, they join forces at Brancepeth Castle, and basically there's a rising in the north. And it involves around 5,000 rebels. Hear mass at Durham Cathedral. They seize various parts of land on the east coast, hoping that the Spanish can arrive. Places like Hartlepool, for example, are seized. But the Spanish, they never arrive. They let them down. And actual fact, what happens is most Catholics within the north don't actually get involved in the rebellion. Most of them sort of respect the fact that Elizabeth is the sort of divinely appointed monarch, and therefore the uprising, the expected rebellion is less than they thought. The Royal Army is easily able to move north, crush the rebellion, and 450 rebels are executed. Now, Westmoreland escapes, but Northumberland is caught and he's beheaded at York in 1572. The Duke of Norfolk gets off pretty lightly, imprisoned, but released after just 9 months, showing that Elizabeth tended to be quite lenient in her approach towards her family members. Now, one of the interesting consequences of the Northern Rebellion is that not that many Catholics really got involved in it, and therefore the Pope at the time, who's called Pope Pius V, sees an opportunity, and he decides that he needs to do something to encourage Catholics in England to rise up and rebel against Elizabeth. So therefore what the Pope does is he excommunicates Elizabeth from the Catholic Church, and basically what this means is that the Catholics in England no longer need to be loyal towards Elizabeth. And this makes a rebellion more likely, and then this leads to harsher laws basically being passed to really tackle Catholics in England and tackle any kind of opposition. So it leads to something called the Treason Act of 1571. So the Ridolfi plot is the next thing to be aware of. So obviously we've got Mary Queen of Scots, who's come to England in 1568. That sparked the Northern Rebellion. That's then led to the papal bull of excommunication. Bull means order, and that's led to the Treason Act. Now in 1571 we also have the Ridolfi plot. Now Roberto di Ridolfi, he's an Italian banker, he's Catholic, he's from Florence, he lives in London. He comes up with a plan basically to restore Catholicism in England. And the plot is made ever more dangerous because of the excommunication by the Pope, which means it's much more likely that English Catholics are going to rebel against her. So the plan of the plot is to assassinate Elizabeth and replace her with Mary Queen of Scots. And the idea is the Spanish will support this, and they will land at Harwich with forces led by the Duke of Alba. Okay, so with the Ridolfi plot, Elizabeth has an absolutely fantastic intelligence network, a spy network essentially, in England at this time. And they discover the conspiracy. And the Spanish ambassador, he's involved, so he's expelled from England. Duke of Norfolk is arrested, found guilty of treason. Elizabeth eventually signs the Duke of Norfolk's death warrant reluctantly. He's executed in June 1572. But crucially, she refuses to execute Mary Queen of Scots. And the reason for this is that Elizabeth obviously regards Mary Queen of Scots as a member of her family. They are cousins. But also, Elizabeth is extremely reluctant to execute somebody that is herself a queen. And this will be something that we'll come back to, because she is very reluctant to execute Mary Queen of Scots during this time. However, she keeps her at arm's length, keeps her imprisoned, keeps her away from being able to do damage. But the key thing with Mary Queen of Scots is that it's not really that she's particularly conspiring and organising these plots, but just her mere presence in England is just very unsettling and very dangerous, because she's a focal point for all of these plots against Elizabeth. So in 1583, there is the Throckmorton plot. Now, the plan here in the Throckmorton plot is for a French Catholic force backed by Spanish and papal money to invade England during this time. And Mary Queen of Scots is absolutely central to this. And the idea would be that she should be freed from house arrest. There would be a Catholic uprising from the Jesuits, who were they're sort of Catholic priests who came over to try and convert people to Catholicism. And Throckmorton's role in it, Francis Throckmorton, was to be the intermediary between Mary and the Spanish ambassador at the time, who's called Bernardino de Mendoza. Now, before the plan could be put into action, Walsingham uncovers the plot, and basically what he does is he places Throckmorton under surveillance for around about 6 months. Then he arrests him, tortures him on the rack, and he confesses. Throckmorton is convicted of high treason. He's executed in July 1584, and then Mendoza is expelled from England, and he's the last Spanish ambassador to live in England during Elizabeth's rule. But Mary survives, and Mary survives because of the lack of crucial evidence really pinpointing what her role was in the plot. But again, it underlines and reinforces the instability that Mary is creating within England at this time. So the final plot, and the crucial one, the one that gets Mary executed, if you like, is the Babington plot. Now, in 1585, Mary had been moved to Tutbury Castle in Staffordshire, and then onto a moated manor house called Chartley Hall. And really, by this stage, Mary is getting older. She's probably suffering from depression. Her hair's fallen out. She's become obese. She's not allowed any visitors. Her letters are checked, and her jailer, who's called Amyas Paulet, is a strict Puritan, and you know she's basically been in prison now or house arrest for nearly 20 years. Mary's become a lot more angry at Elizabeth. She feels a little bit betrayed by Elizabeth's treatment of her, so she begins this secret correspondence with the French ambassador and a man called Sir Anthony Babington, who's a Catholic recusant, and he'd been recruited basically to organise a plot. Now, they write letters to each other in code, and they're smuggled out of Chartley Hall. And basically, a plot is devised where Mary's going to be placed on the throne, Elizabeth's going to be killed, and Catholicism will be re-established. And the hope is that a Spanish invasion will help them do this. Now, Walsingham knew all about the letters. He had a double agent inside Chartley Hall to intercept all the different letters. And on the 17th of July, the sort of smoking gun, if you like, is that Mary wrote a coded letter approving of the plot and consenting to Elizabeth's assassination. Babington gets arrested. He's hung, drawn and quartered along with 6 other conspirators. But what happens to Mary? Well, let's see. So Walsingham now has proof of Mary's guilt. So Mary's placed on trial for treason at Fotheringay Castle in Northamptonshire. She's found guilty, and Parliament insists that Mary should be executed. Elizabeth, however, remains indecisive. She doesn't particularly want to be responsible for the murder of Mary, Queen of Scots, and she only signs the death warrant amid rumours of Spanish landings in Wales. And this is actually something that's fabricated, made up by Lord Burleigh. He essentially says that the Spanish Armada has arrived a year early, and therefore Mary needs to be got rid of now because the situation is so dangerous. So Elizabeth signs the warrant, but she doesn't give it her seal. And this is crucial because what happens is the Privy Council ignore Elizabeth's instructions. The death warrant is sealed, it's sent to Fotheringay Castle, and the execution is carried out. And it's said that when Elizabeth found out, she was absolutely livid, that she hadn't meant for it to happen. But in many ways, this is a convenient ruse for Elizabeth because she's able to give the impression that she didn't want the execution to happen, whilst, of course, the execution did happen. So, Mary Queen of Scots, a crucial character, executed in 1587, but her arrival in England in 1568 directly leads to these different things. The Northern Rebellion, the excommunication of Elizabeth with the Papal Bull and the Treason Act, the Ridolfi plot, Throckmorton plot, increased Catholic opposition in England, and of course the Babington plot of 1586. So that was a revision video about Elizabeth I and Mary, Queen of Scots. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.